Hello and welcome back to our class of soil mechanics. Okay, in this video, we will try to finish our chapter on weight and volume relationship. Okay, this is chapter number 3, and we hope to continue very soon with chapter number 4. Okay, in this chapter number 3, this video, so we will talk about these 3 last points because we did talk about the previous point in the previous videos. So number 7, comment on the emax and emain. And the last one, point number 8, the correlation between emax, emean, and emax minus emean, and medium grain size means D50. Okay, so let's start with the point number 7, comment on emax and emean. This is just about comment, as the title said. Okay, just some comment on this. Some researcher did some research on these two elements, these two parameters of soil, and we are trying to talk about it in this video. Okay, so in the previous video we have talked about relative density, and we have tried to give definition of relative density. So as you see in the definition of relative density, we need the E maximum and E minimum. E means void ratio, okay, which is here volume of void divided by volume of solid soil. So these two, the E maximum and E minimum, some people try to get relationship between these two parameters. Okay, so the E maximum and E minimum void ratio for granular soil depend on several factors. This is after research. They found out they depend on the grain size of the soil. Okay, the shape, the grain shape of the soil. We have talked about the shape of soil particle before. They depend also on the nature of the soil, grain size distribution curve also. The fine content, I think in the beginning of this, or maybe previous chapter, we have talked about fine content, depending on the classification and dimension. If the dimension of this grain of soil are smaller than this 0.075 millimeter, that soil is considered as fine. Okay, so the amount of fine in the soil also will affect the E minimum and the E maximum, and also the amount of non-plastic fine present, because we have plastic one. Plastic is like clay is plastic fine, but there are also some soil which has same dimension of soil clay particle, but they are not clay mineral. Yeah, so those soil, the amount of those non-plastic soil fine present in a given granular soil also affects the E minimum and the E max. These information are obtained after doing some research, and some researchers, the name here, have found this, proposed this curve. Here is the E minimum, and here is small fair in the mixture of volume. Means they mix maybe artificial fair, not soil actually. the minimum, the two different size of steel fair. Okay, they use steel fair, large diameter of 3.15 millimeter, and small fair of small diameter between 0.91 millimeter to 0.16 millimeter. So by mixing these steel fairs, they try to determine the influence of the volume of the minimum size fair on the minimum void ratio, the E minimum. Okay, so this curve, as you can see, for this curve, the ratio between D max and D minimum, this one, 3.15, and the small diameter is 3.46. And you can obtain this curve. In that case, by changing the percentage of the small fires in the mixer, you can get this kind of curve. For example, this point, if you take this point, it means that the amount, the volume of small fires in the total volume is about a little bit more than 30%. And in that case, the minimum void ratio will be around here, higher than 0.4. That is the meaning. So what they notice is that the minimum void ratio, the E minimum, will decrease and reach a very minimum. It will reach an absolute minimum value around here for these two. And after that absolute minimum, it will increase again. So this minimum, E minimum, is like minimum. The E minimum, the minimum of E minimum. This occurs when the volume of fares, small fares, in the mix is VF. So, for example, in the case of this curve, we can say that VF is around less than 40. This one, in this case, the VF is higher than 20, a little bit higher than 20. So means that they did investigate the influence of the minimum, the small fares in the influence of the small fares on the minimum void ratio. So if we replace, instead of steel fares, we replace the steel fares by soil particle, you can guess already that small soil particle will influence on the void ratio of soil. So just remember that the absolute minimum of E minimum is obtained with VF, means a certain volume of small fares in the mix of small and large fares. So they did again investigate how the volume VF, you remember what VF is, will influence the E minimum. So VF, and here we have the ratio of D, the diameter of the larger face, and the small diameter of the small face. This ratio is here. from 0 to 20, how it will influence the E minimum. Because so far we are still talking about the E minimum. So they came up with this table for ratio of the two diameter of large spheres and diameter of smaller spheres. If the ratio is this, we will obtain the E minimum like this, and the volume necessary to obtain this E minimum is here. Means the VF, the volume of small spheres in the mix of the big and small spheres. Okay, so some people also did this kind of research on two type of sand, Nevada sand and Nevada with two ratio, sand and fine, the mixture of sand and fine, two type, and they investigate the E maximum and the E minimum. Okay, this is for E maximum of this type of sand. This is the E minimum for this type of sand. This one. So, and this one, as you can see, is this type of sand. The E minimum is here, this curve, and the E maximum is here, this curve. So how it will, the percentage of fine will influence the E minimum and the E maximum. This vertical axis is both E minimum and E maximum. And this table is obtained. The diameter of D50 of the sun and D50 of the fine, because here is the mixture of the sand and the fine in the sand, the ratio. And the ratio between the D50 of the sand and D50 of the fine is here. Okay, let's talk about the last part of this chapter now. As I said, this is just about comment on this parameter of soil. So some people might find that this is a little bit boring, but those who are interested in doing research, this might be interesting also for them. So this researcher tried to determine the maximum and minimum void ratio on a large number of clean sand samples based on data, and they suggested that relationship between E minimum and E maximum can be obtained by this equation. Actually, this is not inferior, equal. Let's fix this. So they found out that E maximum is equal to 1.62 times E minimum. Okay, and then yeah, this relationship. So means if you have E minimum, you can find E maximum. And if you have E minimum, you can find E maximum. And some people try to investigate this, if this formula is really accurate. And actually, they found out that the equation is not bad. Give reasonable value of a reasonable relationship between E maximum and E minimum. Okay. Let's continue. Some people also investigated the variation of E maximum and E minimum for much larger number of soil based on best fit linear regulation. So depending on the fine content of the sand. For example, for clean sand and fine content, FC means fine content, between 0 to 5%, this relationship is proposed. The E maximum can be obtained by using this equation. E maximum equal to 0.072 plus 1.53 times E minimum. And as I said, FC means fine content. The fine fraction means the size particle that have size smaller than 0.075. And PC, we will talk about that in the next formula, is clay size particle. The soil that are particle that are not clay mineral but have size of clay particle. So if the fine fraction is between 5 to 15%, this formula is proposed. And fine content between 15 and 30% with PC, clay size particle, between 5 to 20, this one is proposed, this formula. And now when we have the fine fraction between 30 and 70% with clay size particle between 5 and 20%, this last formula is proposed. The relationship between E maximum and E minimum. Actually, there is another one, but I think this is just repetition of this one. Okay, so this graph also, this figure also showing relationship between a lot of type of sand. As you can see, clean sand, sand with fine, sand with clay. So roughly, they propose this equation that give relationship between the difference between the E maximum and E minimum, which is here, and the D50, the D50 of soil. So this equation, which I rewrite here, can be used also in some cases. But keep in mind that this is just roughly estimating. It's not really 100% accurate. Okay, I think that's all. So once again, this is just about some comment on these two soil parameters, D minimum and D maximum. So that will be the end of our chapter. So maybe I hope you have learned something from this chapter, and see you next time for the next chapter. Thank you very much.